Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. We really appreciate all of your support and all of your attendance, and are really excited to bring all these estate webinar series to you. There's going to be basically 11 estate sessions, and this is our first one. So we're pretty excited to bring this all to you, and pretty excited that we have the guests that we have today.
Yeah, we're happy to welcome Dr. Tom Deans, award-winning speaker and best-selling author, and we'll engage him in a dialogue today just related to his book and his index. It's not about writing a will and thinking that you're done. We agree with Tom when he said that culturally, we may be programmed to think everything needs to be a secret, but it's a lot more effective when it becomes more of a conversation and an ongoing process. Obviously, that you can participate in too. And then we can obviously, kind of coach you through that whole process with our values-based planning approach. And through your participation, and partly through events like this, we will definitely make progress. So let's get to it.
Tom, thanks for being here today. We really appreciate it. And to our audience, on the right-hand side of the screen, you should see a question bar. So as you guys have questions, we're going to try to make this a little bit more real and conversational again today. So as you have questions, please put those in. And as we go through the presentation, we'll start to answer them near the end for you. But Tom, I think obviously talking about COVID-19, the conversations that I'm having with clients on a constant occasion, and also, the concern about, especially many people in Calgary and Edmonton know what's going on with a lot of the seniors' homes. And, we have a lot of doctors as clients, we have a lot of nurses as clients, as well as people who are now having family affected. And I think the biggest thing we're seeing is confusion over why some people are getting out of these homes and actually getting measures taken at the hospital to get intubated or to get respirators and being put in ICU, and other people are not. And you're seeing Alberta Healthcare saying, some of the people really aren't prepared for this, whereas other people have in their personal directives that they want extraneous measures to be taken and they want their lives to be saved to whatever measure possible. And those are the ones that they're directing to actually leave those homes to go get the care at the hospitals versus the other ones who have to stay in and just, really almost shelter in place until either they get better or something happens. And that's really obviously very distressing to families. Can you discuss more?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for inviting me to share some of my ideas that are both in the book and in the index, but also at this really crucial moment in our nation's history. And I think it is quite extraordinary. I think there are a lot of people who are sitting back and looking at the benefits of really good planning, like people who work with their advisors, who sat down with their lawyers, not just last month, but last year, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years regularly, and have updated their estate plans. They're sitting back now, and despite all of the anxiety that we're all experiencing, those people who practice good planning are in a pretty good place. And you described who they are. Those are not just individuals, but those are individuals whose families actually participated in those conversations. And not only did those people write great wills, power of attorneys, and healthcare directives, but they actually elected to share those documents with their families. So just as you described, those families are in a perfect place right now to either withdraw a family member from a long-term care facility because those documents and those conversations are in place. Those family members are empowered to serve and act in the benefit of their parents and relatives. These are amazing gifts. The flip side, of course, is people who are panicking now, people who don't have those documents in place, they're finding it super difficult to actually get lawyers into these facilities to witness the execution of these documents. And it's just logistically really, really hard. So this is not the time to say, I told you so, completely inappropriate. But what I'm saying is, I told you so. I mean, we've all been talking about this for so long. Right? 12.5 million Canadian adults are missing a will. That's over half of all Canadian adults are missing the most important document in an estate plan. And we both know, right? If you don't have a will, I don't know anyone who doesn't have a will but has a power of attorney and a healthcare directive. Like usually when we go in to see a lawyer for a will, we come out of that meeting with 2 bonus documents. And those are the 2 documents that you just highlighted. Those are those power of attorneys. Those are those documents, for example, power of attorney. We have a relative, say, on a ventilator. A power of attorney actually enforces the ability of an individual who we've appointed to actually execute our financial affairs as if they are us, right? We've appointed someone to act on our behalf. Those are brilliant documents. Many people are going to come off ventilators, are going to be in fine shape, and their affairs would have not skipped a beat. And those are great gifts that people give themselves and their family. So when we talk about estate planning today, we're really talking in the broadest terms about those 3 documents that make up an estate plan: a will, a power of attorney, and a healthcare directive.
And I know a lot of the doctors are having kind of ethical issues because, of course, those people don't have the people there to speak for them because they have to be alone. And I think, that's where they're kind of going, if I don't have a healthcare directive, they're making choices right now that even they're concerned about.
They are. They're being put in incredibly difficult ethical positions, and as our family members, as our individuals who are lying in a long-term care facility, trying to noodle this themselves, trying to intellectualize themselves their options, and struggling with this because they don't have the benefit of having conversations with advisors right now. So this is probably the most challenging time. I think we're all looking for things that we will emerge from this crisis, things that will make us individually better, families stronger, a nation more resilient. I think if anything comes out of this, it will be a heightened awareness and a profound understanding of how important estate planning is.
And I think it's never too late to begin those conversations, which are obviously very timely. Jeff, do you want to quickly do your poll?
Hey everyone, it's Jeff from the Tower Group. We're going to run a quick poll on the screen. So once that launches, just pick and then submit, and then we'll share the results with the group. Okay, I still see some more votes coming in. About to close the polls.
Okay, there's still about a few more that hadn't voted, but come on, everyone, you got to participate.
Here's the result.
Right. Okay, well, the good news is that there is plenty of time after this session to complete that link and that index. And I think, almost every 9 months or 12 months, that poll can be, or that index can be recompleted just to get your score continually increasing as we move through the planning. Perfect.
Yeah. And so make sure, you guys all complete that Wisdom Index, because really it gives you a checklist, which Tom can talk about more in this, but it gives you your own checklist to be able to work with us and to be able to work with the lawyers of how we can actually get your estate plan to be in the 90s or even preferable 100. I didn't even get 100, and I think I'm pretty good at it. So
Great. So our next question is about wills, which are often misunderstood. A lot of people think that a will is other people benefiting from your money, but really you are your own beneficiary, or you have the true benefit from using your will. I think it probably would be the start of the process. Tom, would you agree with that?
Well, I would, and I mean, I think for the technician or a lawyer who might be listening, they may think, well, that's very odd. Like, a will is a document that speaks when we can't. It answers the question, who gets my stuff when I'm gone, right? And we may wonder why 12.5 million people don't have that document. I think for a lot of people, they have mistakenly believed that, what's the urgency? I mean, it's really not a fun exercise to figure out who's going to get your car, your home, your cash, your entire life's work divided up. And really, it's a really great place for me to kind of jump in and say, that's why I wrote this book, Willing Wisdom. It actually offers a very different idea that, in fact, I believe that the biggest beneficiary of my will is me, because I've not only elected to write that will and answer the question, who gets my stuff, but I have actually told the people who will be impacted by my wealth. I do not understand, Kelly, why Canadians, culturally, we believe that the best estate plans are the ones that we keep secret. I don't understand it. There is a huge opportunity in sitting families down and saying, look, we don't know when we're going to die. We don't know how we're going to die. We certainly know from this COVID-19 experience that, things happen. And I just want to sit down as a family and have this conversation together and just prepare you for what I believe is coming your way and have a full, honest, and respectful conversation about that. I think it's fascinating when families can overcome this fear of communicating what is going to be shared and actually use that conversation to deepen relationships. And here's my theory. I believe that families that can talk openly about their wills, it actually shows up in the quality and the quantity of long-term care that they hope to receive from who? From our intended beneficiaries. The people that we intend to leave our wealth are almost always the same people who are stepping up and driving us around in our 80s and 90s to get our prescriptions filled. They're the people who are scheduling our long-term care workers. They're the people that are overseeing that care if they're not providing it themselves. This connection between long-term care and who we select as beneficiaries is so intertwined. It is so closely connected. And that's what Willing Wisdom is trying to do. It's trying to start that conversation and answer the question, where will I live when I'm old? In whose hands will I put my affairs into? And who will get my stuff? And I think when families can use their surplus capital while they're alive to answer those questions, I think we're going to build stronger families, better, more durable estate plans. And I think if things go really well, we'll put the estate litigators out of business. But before we shed a tear, don't worry. There are 12.5 million unwritten wills. There's about $6 billion of unwritten wills. So don't feel bad about the lawyers. I just want to take the lawyers that are helping families fight and move them over to helping them write wills and bring some peace and calm to our nation.
Yeah, and I think, speaking on behalf of the estate litigators, like we have one on our attendees right now that actually is doing the next session, but I think in talking to a lot of them, as they can't deal with all the drama and all the misery of that. They don't want it either. They'd rather see people who are completely prepared and make it easy for people, because it's a lot less stress not only for them, but it's a lot of less stress for those people.
Yeah,
sure.
there's no joy. There's no joy in the drama. I tell my audiences all the time when I'm speaking in small communities and large cities right across the country. Listen, if you think divorce is expensive, that's like a dress rehearsal for the really big show, and that's estate litigation. That's where all the family gets all in on everything, and it's so regrettable. And in many cases, there's a lot of ambiguity in estate plans because there's been no family meetings, there's been no discussion behind the logic on why someone got more. There are many people who think someone exercised undue influence over a parent and over the writing of that will, or a late in life change to a will. And a lot of people, they don't blame their parent who has died. They don't blame their family member who has died. They project their dissonance on the living as if someone automatically asked for that change. And I think when families really develop good governance behavior, really good governance skills by using and relying on lawyers, relying on accountants, relying on folks like yourself to attend those family meetings and facilitate calm, rational, repetitive family meetings where there are no surprises, man, those are great estate plans. Those aren't wills that get challenged. Those aren't impetuous, late in life decisions. Those are conscious, well thought out plans. And I can tell I would be shocked if the lawyer listening in right now, who's going to continue on with the podcast, I would be shocked if he or she did not do a bedside will in a hospital, right? This is where family members scramble at the last minute when a parent is admitted, not in great shape, and the lawyer is called in. There is no joy being a lawyer and trying to piece together a list of assets, trying to figure out who gets the farm, who gets the vehicles, the cash, the art, the watches, the jewelry, the emotional items that get families all whipped up. You've got family members in the hallway grieving, popping their head in, trying to figure out how it's going down. I mean, you could not design a worse place to do estate planning, trying to time it like an oil change. Like, folks, this is the time right now. And we only need this COVID-19 crisis to really heighten our senses and the importance of this.
Yeah, and I think clients that have been our clients for a long time too, I think realize, as much as I hate to say it, these last 2 Christmases have been the first 2 Christmases that in 22 years or 21 years of running this business, that we actually haven't settled an estate in the hospital at Christmas time with the lawyer's bedside. At even, you know, one of Matt's colleagues too, that, you know, was there doing some of these things, as well as some people with his firm also being there. And it's like that, these are the times when people tend to look at this stuff, is when we have an emergency like this, or, you know, they have to, they're pressured into it. And I think, you know, it's funny that you said that, because I was like, you know, every Christmas our clients have seen it where they're like, how come you're doing this? And it's like, well, here's what's happened. And you know, we definitely have had a mandate on for the last 2 years that people have seen, as, you know, we're getting people on it now and making sure that they're prepared and making sure that they're making these decisions when they can.
What I'm hearing is that it's a living document, it's a process, and whether we're choosing to have some of those awkward or difficult conversations or not, and ignoring them, both of those are choices with repercussions. I'm just going to read an excerpt from your book, Tom. Is more than 125 million US and Canadian citizens over the age of 18 have no will. This is a tragedy in the making that will transcend money and relationships. The time for a new relationship-based approach to estate planning has arrived. And Pam and I would add the thought that the only thing worse than no will is a crappy will. Can you speak, Tom, to a relationship-based approach and what that really means to estate planning?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, as much as I mean, I feel like I'm being hard maybe on some of the listeners, understand this. This is emotionally tricky. This subject of estate planning has eluded some of the most accomplished business owners, academics, legal minds. 1968, Bobby Kennedy takes a bullet in Los Angeles. That was a pretty horrific event for Americans. Okay, so there was a silver lining. He had a will. The bad news is, who do you think his executor was? That's right, JFK, assassinated 5 years earlier. His will was never updated. If you think the rich and the powerful have their estate plans buttoned down perfectly, think again. There is almost not a month that goes by where a celebrity, Prince, Aretha Franklin, man, the list is long, it goes on and on and on, where some billionaire or celebrity dies and they have made a mess of their estate plan. They have either been told that it's not important, or they do an estate plan and then they do as you suggest, or they don't do as you suggest, they leave it alone. They say, well, I did it, I have a will. Meanwhile, they've had, you know, the birth of grandchildren, new children, they've maybe been divorced, like huge life changes. I mean, a will is a living document, is a document that needs to be revisited every single year. I mean, I hear a lot of professionals say you should review a will every 5 years. I do not know what is magical about 5 years. It's the same thing with business owners who might be listening. If you ask a business owner, do they have a business succession plan? Are they going to exit their business, transition their business? They'll always say the same thing. Yep, in 5 years. I come back next year, it's not 4, it's always 5. I don't know what it is about the number 5, but especially when it comes to business succession planning and wills and estate planning, 5 years seems to be this magic number. Well, we all know, right? 5 years comes, 5 years goes. I call my birthday my will day. I read my will on my birthday every single year. I don't read the full document. I mean, I know what it says. There's a couple of paragraphs that are material that really answer that question. Has anything material in my life changed? Have I started a business, sold a business, birth of a new family member, a death of a family member? Is there something in the logic and in the beneficiaries that I've selected? Has anything material changed that I need to update my will? I can tell you, I updated my will 3 times 1 year. I sold a business, I started a business, birth of a niece. Lots of things change. And I think when we can start to look at the importance of family meetings as a great gathering with our advisors present once a year, takes an hour, takes 2 hours, 3 hours, with maybe a lawyer present talking about maybe one subject, like what's the duty and role of an executor? I mean, I've seen entire family meetings built around a family discussing one issue. Who should we select as an executor? That's a huge subject. That it is a beautiful gift to talk about that. Do you know when most Canadians are learning about who is selected as an executor? I'll tell you. It's on the death of a parent. And is it at the lawyer's office? No, it's at a funeral home, where the funeral director is asking a family member, who's got a copy of your mother or father's will? It's a legal requirement that they ask that question because the executor has the legal authority to implement final wishes. That is when family members are learning for the first time who has been named as executor. And I can tell you, if there's been no prior discussion in the family, you want to watch a family who's grieving go sideways. You think lawyering up in the middle of a funeral is a great plan for families? Listen, we can do so much better. And I think the work, and I know the work that you're doing just by having this webinar to try to educate and raise the bar and really prepare families for this, the most obvious and inevitable thing in life. It's such an amazing gift that you're giving your clients.
When Tom, we've heard of creative approaches for an annual update, like writing a last letter and then sharing that letter, or a list of intentions with special assets or nostalgic assets, or even like a video journal or a legacy memoir or things like that. That might be an annual update too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love these. I love these letters, and I also like. I mean, I like the formalization. I like the formalization of a family physically coming together. I mean, if there's one thing we're taking away from this crisis is the importance of family. Like, right? I'm running around grabbing groceries for my parents who are in their 80s. I'm serving them. I mean, it is a great honor to be able to perform that function. I mean, it's not some random person who's doing this. We are leaning on family like never before. And I think it's a really great dress rehearsal for all of us to look at estate planning and how it's going to look for not only our elderly parents, but when we age, what's this going to look like? I mean, often the next generation, family systems theory suggests that we repeat. So our children are watching the way that we're serving our parents now. I mean, it's incredible, the institution and the culture of family and how repetitive it is. And I think the same thing with estate planning, when we can teach our children that at the age of 18, how important it is for them to get a will. And the first pushback you get is, well, my children are 18. They don't have any assets. They don't need a will. I'm like, listen to me carefully. A will is just one part of it. Remember those two other documents, the power of attorney, right? The healthcare directive. I sat and I watched that horrible Humboldt bus accident, that tragedy that visited that small Saskatchewan community. And I can tell you, I knew what was happening. I knew there were parents showing up at that hospital. And I knew that they were bumping into privacy laws. I knew the hospital administrators were asking parents, do you have a copy of your son or daughter's healthcare directive? And you know what the answer was? No, they don't need wills. They didn't have these documents, right? We think estate planning is for old people. I can tell you right now, when both our kids, when they turned 18, we bought them wills. Now, they were very disappointed. They were hoping for cars, but this is what we do. We don't update their will. That's their job. They're a young adult. The law doesn't say, well, you're just a young adult. We'll give you a free pass. The law says at 18, you're an adult. You might as well be 81, not 18, right? So I think when we start to, really generate really great habits for our children by teaching them about the importance of this stuff and the importance of maintaining and updating their own documents, these are great gifts that we give ourselves and our families.
Yeah. And I think, people that we have on the screen right now, actually, so we have one business owner that, has done a really great job for his kids. Is, he's not only set up a charitable foundation that he's letting his children participate in and be aware of, and he's got one daughter who's a vet, and she's gone through school, and they've been trying to promote their kids, as well as he supports, both him and his wife support the parents and take them on cruises as an annual family event, but they also discuss what they're doing, not only from the parent standpoint of here's what we're doing with our estate, to here's the family, plus sharing it with the kids. And because he's a business owner, has had a business bought out, he's trying to share that with his daughter now, of starting a vet practice fresh out of university, becoming a vet, and you see that generational thing happening. And even a few years back, we had an oil guy who owned a couple engineering firms. Same thing, he's on the call, but they have a couple engineering firms as well as an oil company. Dad dies. Dad's always wanted his son on the business, and all the way along, the son was in music, and then had to take over the business at 19 years old when Dad passes away on a fishing trip that they had. And you know, it's with our help, you know, and with the money from really all this planning that happened with the dad, you know, they were able to do what they needed to do, and he was able to actually continue on with the business and hire the people that he needed to hire and go to university and take engineering so that he understood some of the stuff that dad was doing. And you know, you kind of go, the thing that I think there was missed out so much on is, you know, never discussing what he did with the business with the son, that he wanted the son to be so part of it. And, you know, he did all the planning that needed to be done from a financial aspect, but he didn't do the planning from really what you could share with what you learned with him, that he's had to go and learn himself, and he's done it successfully, and he's been able to run the businesses successfully, but he's needed all the people behind him to help support the business, which all the planning helped him be able to do. So I was, you know, extremely proud of those two families for doing that.
I think what those two stories highlight is that there are some types of assets like operating businesses that are vastly more complex to transition than, say, cash, right? Someone dies, cash is super easy to divide. No one is a reluctant receiver or beneficiary of cash. People love cash. I've never met anyone who's like, well, I received some cash. It's a pretty sad day. Cash is freedom. Cash is flexibility. Family cottages, operating businesses come with incredible complexity, emotional legacy, a hardwired kind of sense of duty to continue on those assets, as if, you know, the founder's legacy must be continued on in perpetuity, which in many cases, you know, family members can try. It is incredibly difficult. And so, you know, I know you know that my first book, Every Family's Business, dealt with that whole transition of an operating business. And just so how few family businesses survive, right? Only 30% survive to the second generation, and only 3% survive to the third, right? So, and a lot of that wealth destruction is taking place because a lack of family communication, a lack of formal governance and sharing of expectations and expertise, as you described in that second story. And so,
would you have advice?
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you have advice to starting that communication?
Yeah, well, you will know that Willing Wisdom offers 7 questions that families can use. That's what it's really meant to do. It's really meant to start conversations. It's not going to finish the conversation. I'm a conversation starter. I really believe in the Socratic approach. I believe that when we ask really great questions, open-ended questions that start conversations without really leading people to the right answer. I mean, I don't know what is right for most family. Every estate plan should be different. Every family dynamic is different. People's expectations are different. I mean, I've met people who've inherited literally $80 million and turned it into $4 billion. Like this idea that automatic wealth, instant wealth, will automatically destroy someone, the recipient, is nonsense. But I've also met people who have inherited $10,000 and have been dead in 30 days because of their addiction. You see the extreme of those two stories? I mean, inherited wealth will do one of two things. It will release potential in the next generation, or it will accelerate demise. And we don't know unless we explore that while we're thinking clearly, while we are alive, while we have our family relationship, while we have that gift of the opportunity to sit and explore those collaboratively. So, returning to your original question, I mean, I really believe that a will is a living document, and that it is a collaborative undertaking, that the best estate plans are not where someone elderly sits down and says, I have a lot of surplus capital because I have worked hard and deferred consumption, and so this is how I'm going to leave my wealth. You get this, you get that, and you get this. This kind of a dictatorial approach where control is exercised in a kind of solitary way. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about the absolute opposite. I have been a speaking resource inside family meetings. These are where families meet once a year, and they bring in people like myself. There's many people like myself who come in and teach the next generation about wealth and its limitations. I could barely tell in some of those meetings who has the $1 billion, who has the $1 million. They are using their family meetings not to exercise control over the lives of beneficiaries. They're actually doing the opposite. They're using their family meetings as a dress rehearsal to prepare the next generation. They are making themselves very tiny in that process. And so what they're doing is actually making living gifts, small amounts of money to the next generation, and coaching them and guiding them and resourcing them and teaching them how to start businesses, right? Those are great gifts. In fact, I would argue that the coaching, the mentoring, the feedback, the value of that shared wisdom in that family is actually more valuable than the money itself. And that, in essence, is will and wisdom. It's not how to write a wise will. I mean, the lawyers can help with that. It's how do we share something more valuable than just our money? How do we take our collective wisdom and the good things that we did in life, where we pulled up short? How do we share both those kinds of stories so the next generation don't make the same mistakes? I mean, people forget that if all we are expecting is our children to be some version of ourselves, we'd never have the Ford Motor Company. Henry Ford's father was a farmer. If all we were to do is say, look, I'm a farmer, my father was a farmer, my great-grandfather was a farmer, that's all we would ever produce is a version of ourselves, right? We'd never have Apple. Steve Jobs' father ran a restaurant. Bill Gates' father, Microsoft founder, his father was a lawyer. One of the great things that we can give our families in these family meetings is the space, the room, the creativity to go off and be the people they are meant to be. And if that means transitioning wealth today in real terms, small amounts of cash to seed the start of new businesses, man, those are profound gifts. That is, in fact, how great dynastic families are created and nurtured. Not by hoarding our wealth to the very end, dying, then the big reveal, and then people in their 60s, right? Because our parents are now dying later in their 80s and 90s. People in their 60s getting vast amount of wealth. $205 million will be inherited today in Canada, tomorrow and every day for the next 10 years, right? $755 billion. It's a staggering amount of money. And you know what? Most of those people in their 60s are like, well, that's great. That's great. That's fantastic. I just received a $3 million estate from my last surviving parent. What am I going to do with that? I don't have a mortgage. I don't really want much. In fact, I'm getting rid of stuff. I'm simplifying my life. And there's a lot of antipathy. I mean, what people say was, you know what would have been really great is $100,000 25 years ago would have been really great, would have been really material, or $5,000 or $10,000 5 years ago. Something, but you know, over and over, we're doing this. Because we can't answer the question, because people don't have the advice that you're providing. They don't have advisors. They don't know how much money they need in retirement, so they hoard their wealth. They have so much more than they need. And then, of course, when they get to a stage in life where they find out that there's one thing that money can't buy, that's when they rethink their strategy.
But I think that's some of our biggest successes, I guess, with clients is helping them share a living legacy, or giving them the confidence to maybe share some of the wisdom as well as the wealth, like you said, to their kids and their family members when it can benefit them. So I think there's going to be a lot of good conversation that yields from this. We do have a list of those questions that will generate those conversations, and we'll share that afterwards as well. Jeff, did you want to move to your next poll?
Yeah, absolutely. Our next slide will be a poll. Everyone plug in your answers, and then we'll share the results with the group.
And everybody has to answer this time.
So far, okay, now we got some traction. The votes are coming in. So we have about 70% of the room that's voted, 85%, 89. Okay, I'm closing the polls. In 3, 2, 1. Let's see the result.
There's quite a few people that, your will's outdated. So it's a good time that we're having these conversations to make sure that we've updated all of that for you and made sure that we're looking after this. And then, of course, the other one that I'm laughing at is that, no, it seems scary or too complicated. It really isn't. And that's what we're hoping to give you guys the knowledge and the confidence. And I think by having this checklist that we're providing today for free from Tom Deans here is his Willing Wisdom Index, and it's a great checklist. I loved it for myself. I've loved it for all the clients that we've done it for, and our goal is to walk through that step by step and making sure that we're prepared with the lawyers and with everything else in your family, and making sure that we get that right so that you're able to look at that and be able to say we've covered everything.
Kelly, can I jump in and just say one thing? Because I know it's something that you can't say. You're not lawyers. You don't make any money doing this.
Nope. Nope.
Right?
Right.
You know how many few advisors are doing this, doing what you're doing?
When I think, Tom,
I can tell you very, very few.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this in the past too, but like we share that mission, right? And just in terms of empowering households on these topics. Because I think it's human nature to maybe have some fear around these topics or a sense of trepidation. It's easy to procrastinate, but instead, if we have a sense of curiosity around the questions and we use some of the tools that we're presenting, I think we can make results. It's true also that there's a psychology behind wealth and some of this planning. Tom, I think we'd be interested to know what are your most interesting stories, maybe from a best case scenario or a worst case scenario. What have you got in your banks of experience there?
I think there's an incredible amount of fear around this subject. I think there's a lot of, and I hear this from a lot of families, a lot of superstition. A lot of people think if we meet as a family and talk about our will and tip our hand about how the business will transition or who gets that painting or who gets the watch, that somehow the family is going to spin out of control and they will have opened up a can of worms needlessly. And so let's sleeping dogs lie, right? I mean, and so then for some reason they read the book, they hear maybe an advisor like yourself who's like really super serious about this because you've seen how damaging it can be when someone dies without a will, dies intestate, and all the cost and complexity that rains down on surviving family members. And so they persevere and they take 8 minutes and they click on that little index and they get their checklist and then they get the report and they go, you know what, I'm going to do this. And then they have a family meeting and the first thing they say to their kids, like, we want to get together and talk about this stuff. And then the first thing the kids say is, oh my God, are you dying? And then they go, no, our financial advisor seems really like insistent that we like have these meetings. And so they have the meeting and you know what? No, there's no screaming. There's no screaming. There's no crying. There's just people who are like, oh my gosh, we're just so glad to hear that you'd save some money for long-term care. We didn't know if we should start saving for you. Or, man, it's super great to know what your expectations are of us and how we can serve you. You've given us so much. You paid for our education. You see this incredible goodwill unlocked in a family when we strip away the secrecy. When the family member, and I've heard these stories, say, you know what, we explained to our children that we just had to pick one of our children as executors because another one lived in the US. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, you have co-executors, you have someone living in the US. I mean, your lawyer can cover some of the technical challenges with how we select executors and who we select. And when family members can say, look, we've just selected one person because here's the law and here's why. And then people are like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. Often we don't set our executors up to succeed. We actually do the opposite by being secretive. So some of the stories that I'm hearing are people overcoming this fear, and then they take a risk. They have a family meeting, they open up the conversation, they strip away the secrecy, and then you know what pops out the other end? A more resilient family, a family that is, I don't know, clears the way for siblings to actually have a relationship because the question's been answered. A lot of time kids are jockeying for, I don't know, some perceived favor or benefit. And I think when parents shut that down and say, look, here's the way it's going to be equal. And by equal, we mean this. And I just think that those are great preconditions for really great family relationships to thrive.
Once you have that conversation once, I think what we've heard back reported is that it's easier to have it in the future. They're surprised that they've built more of a quality connection. They thought they were close with their family already, but then they become even closer. It's kind of like that mental and energetic boost after spring cleaning when it's all done. It's like, okay, now that we've, people kind of report back that they kind of feel like they've got a load off, right? Where they've, just kind of, a sense of fresh air, or just easier to breathe, I suppose, too, right?
It's interesting if you look into the history of some of the great dynastic American families and compare and contrast the trajectory of the Rockefellers. J.D. Rockefeller was a huge proponent of family meetings and governance and really preparing heirs. Like, he wasn't just going to leave it to fate. Really, he knew the survival rate of family money, right? Shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves. Like, that version of that family trajectory is embedded globally. In Asia, it's rice paddy to rice paddy. They talk about that, right? Started as a farmer, makes some money, second generation maintains it, third one blows it. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wherever you go. I was in South Africa speaking at a conference, clogs to clogs, the Dutch influence, right? Same thing, shirt sleeve to shirt sleeve. So I think really what you learn is when family members get together and they actually start to say, no, we're going to change that trajectory. We're not going to go the way of the Vanderbilts. We're going to go the way of the Rockefellers. And we are actually going to really prepare our heirs to go off and be the people they were meant to be. Highly unlikely that the next generation will share exactly the same passion for the exact same business and business model as the previous generation. It is improbable. And yet, culturally, we have this baked-in idea that the only way of measuring success for a family enterprise is for someone to continue on in their parents' footsteps and then their grandchildren, and then say that even the unborn will be farmers, even the unborn will be making shoes because we've always been a shoemaker. It's crazy. The great gifts we give our family are those freedoms to go off, and the capital, quite frankly, to go off. And I'm speaking from experience. My great-grandfather was in the hotel business. Sold that business. My grandfather inherited, started a chemical manufacturing business, a publicly traded company. That didn't stay in the family. That one got sold. My father inherits. He starts a plastics company. I worked in that business, ran that business, and we sold that business in February of 2007. That's 4 businesses, 4 generations. Start them, run them, sell them. We transition wealth. We don't transition operating businesses. This is a very different idea. I've already asked our 2 kids whether or not they want to risk their capital and buy my business, and guess what they've said?
They have a different path.
No, I am not disheartened. They are competent, educated, hardworking, driven children pursuing their own dreams with lots of access to family money behind them. That's their job, is to go out and find the next great thing. And highly likely it is going to be a version of what I'm doing. It's a very different approach to estate planning, but one that starts from a position of actually relinquishing control, not using our money to control the destiny of our children, but actually quite the opposite.
And I think, the other thing that I was just going to talk about quickly before we finish and answer some questions that are coming up is, you talk a lot about involving charities. And I know a lot of people have gone to accountants, and accountants go, well, there's only so much we can claim for the, charity tax deduction. But obviously in today's world, you get way more of a charity tax deduction, but a lot of people just hand them over a check. And what I found fascinating about your Willing Wisdom book is something that I've always been doing, but of course I've given as a, really as a alumni of my university. And so I'm kind of involved with the university. I'm involved with ARCs and things like that with my stuff. They know what I would expect, and I've always involved them with the estate. And I've often told my clients, when you go in there, sit down and talk to them or have them be part of a family meeting. And maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that, just because I think it's worth your while not just to hand a charity a check, but kind of talk to them about what they're doing, what their governance is. And
yeah, if the people who are watching and tuning in here haven't done their Willing Wisdom Index, they'll see that there are a couple of questions that are dealing specifically with that. I mean, one of the fastest growing areas of estate litigation, are you ready for this? It's children suing charities. Their parents have left a major gift in their will, a planned gift, not told their children, and then a parent dies, and the will is read, and the children lose their mind because the gift was never discussed. I mean, how sad is that? That's what we're leaving. Not everywhere, but those are some of the more dysfunctional examples of families that find it difficult to talk. The flip side of that is those family meetings where I'm brought in as a resource to speak, I'm sitting in the waiting room before I go in to give my presentation. I'm talking to other presenters. Some of them are charities, and they're going in. It's like a version of Dragon's Den. They're going in to pitch the entire family on the worthiness of their cause. And there's 2 or 3 of these charities there. And that family is going to grill these charities. And then they're going to vote as a family on who's going to get their annual apportionment of their charitable dollars that year. And it's a game, and it's fun, and the family are all in, and they've done their research, and some are rooting for, international development charity. Another one's looking for a medical research charity. Another one is like very different. But it is so fun to see that family engage in that subject of philanthropy. And do you know what the real takeaway is from that? What the family patriarchs and matriarchs are doing in designing their family meetings that way is to connect their children to the idea that $1 spent on investments, $1 spent on consumption, or $1 spent on philanthropy is given the same kind of intellectual rigor. They're teaching their children the value of $1, right? As opposed to, and I was the chairman of our local hospital foundation, there wasn't a year that went by where we didn't receive a 6-figure gift from someone we had no idea who they were. No idea what they even wanted us to do with the money. It was such an administrative task, just writing a check. What a lost opportunity for both the family and for the institution, the recipient, not to know how to honor those gifts.
Well, even beyond charities or business planning, what Pam and I have found, and even just on the basic, simple personal matters within an estate, a lot of our clients say, well, my family gets along, my kids get along. It is always, always smoother with proper conversation in advance. And then you try to guarantee that it will be smooth after the fact, right? So I think just moving on to key takeaways, Tom, would you want the viewers to take anything specific from our session today?
I think if we kind of back up and say, let's look at estate planning this way and answer the question this way. How do we want to build families that work well when we're not here? And I think when we start estate planning from that premise, it is a great gift that we are giving ourselves, because that family is going to rally and serve us when we can't serve ourselves. 1 in 3 Canadians over age 65 are presenting some symptoms of early dementia. We know that this cohort is only going to become more complex. We know that family will become more important in terms of late in life advocacy, patient advocacy. We want to give ourselves a gift. Then we start estate planning from that premise. How do we build a family that works well when we're not here? And we'll also answer the question, how do we build a family that serves us when we can't serve ourselves?
Yep. Thank you, Tom. Thanks very much. And I
Thanks
think
for having me.
for those healthcare nurses and some of the physicians that are online today, I definitely would say copy that code down, and if you find it useful to actually give to patients too, that's kind of living through this, that's a great takeaway that you can kind of give your patients to kind of get them started even on a checklist as to the direction that they can go as well, because I think that's so important in today's world, is to, it gives people a sense of control. I think a little bit of feeling like if they're at that end of life, it's like, and they haven't done the things that they need to do, it's like, well, what checklist do I need to go through to make that happen? Sometimes, I see physicians and, for a lot of our clients have said, start making plans. And then they come to us and they're like, I have no idea what to do. I have cancer and here's what's happening. And I think, we'll go through that with them. But I think it also, like, if they had something in their hand that they take away, I think that would make them feel better too.
Great. I think we can move to the questions. Jeff, do you want to moderate that?
Yeah, so we do have a couple questions that have been sent in. So you have 2 options. You can type a question using the question panel on your GoToMeeting, or you can raise your hand and we'll call on you and I'll just unmute your mic. So you'll have to be signed into the phone in order to raise your hand and answer a question. But for the first question that we have comes from Jessica. She's asking, is the POA and health directive written with the same lawyers who write your will?
And yes, I think they should be, and you can elaborate, Tom.
Yeah, I think there's real benefits in having continuity. One advisor, one lawyer, not only advising that one client, but also advising an entire family. Like, I see that as a real asset when families share the same advisory team, right? There's that continuity and clarity that comes from, and the same thing for business owners and shareholder agreements, right? A will drafted by the same guy who wrote a shareholder agreement and power of attorney and healthcare directive, all those documents should speak to each other. They should be consistent. I think the probability of that happening are vastly improved when we have, one lawyer.
And a powerful
Good question.
step is sharing those documents with the people named in them. Often you're picking them that they've got similar values to you, and telling them what you would like to see happen in different situations. That's also a very powerful step on that.
Oh, absolutely, Kelly. I mean, can you imagine being appointed power of attorney and you don't have the document, and then someone finds themselves in trouble, and right, and everyone's
Happens
taking
all
the
the time.
home apart, looking for a document that they don't know where exists. I mean, the whole idea here is not just get it done, but actually really think it through. And how do we get these documents in the hands of the people who can serve us?
Right.
Yeah. And that takes into account, a business succession plan, because I know we have quite a few business owners on here that also have partners or have people that they're trying to purchase out. And I think, that's something very important that you consider, is having that business succession plan, because it's like a will for your business. Because if something happened to that other person and you've spent all this money buying into the business, or, building up this business with these people, and all of a sudden it's like you have nothing other than, hey, I own so many shares, and what's happening with your shares, and making sure that we have all that button down. I think that's just as important as the will, personal directives, and power of attorney as well for people.
I don't want to turn this into a tax seminar, but yeah, a business owner who dies unexpectedly, the shares, if they're the only shareholder, the shares will often go to a surviving spouse. And in many cases, they don't have the operational knowledge, and the business just atrophies. Like, I'm talking about in years, I'm talking months and weeks. Key employees leave, customers leave, they don't know the lender, lenders call loans. Like, it's just heartbreaking watching a number of family businesses destroy themselves because there's no contingency plan, there's no succession plan. So yeah, that's really the material that I'm covering in the first book, Every Family's Business. But that is a huge problem. And of course, if guys, bad news, we still die first statistically. When we die and we send our shares to our surviving spouse and they die a couple of years later statistically, guess what then happens? The shares come down to the kids, usually in equal amounts. We're thrusting our children into business together as equal business partners. And that's when the capital gains tax is triggered. Those founder shares are originally valued at $1. Guess where the kids go for cash to pay their personal tax bill for the free business they got when their last parent died? They're reaching into the business for cash, and guess what? It's not there. So the business fails. And then we read about it in the local newspaper, and we go, oh man, that next generation, man, are they lazy. They are so incompetent. They blew up their parents' business. That's why only 30% survive to the second generation and 3% survive to the third, because we're designing them that way. And the blame really does not rest with the children. There's no liquidity. There's no planning. And it's the next generation that's wearing the shame and the blame for these businesses that are failing. It's not fair. It's not right. We have a duty and obligation to do our last deal to really set our family up for success. And I'm not just talking about financial success. I'm talking about not being put in the position to clean up the mess that we leave.
Yeah, we could definitely help with that, and we might have some more work on our hands, Pam.
Yep. And we have some more questions. We have people with questions.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions here related to the same topic. So Gord's asking, how do you avoid decrease lawyer fees and costs involved when creating and updating your 3 living documents?
It's a great question. And that's, if there was really one thing that I really had in mind when I was writing the Willing Wisdom Index, this checklist, what that checklist does after investing all of 8 minutes of your life is it produces a to-do list. It gives you a series of recommendations that kind of reveal the gaps in your estate plan. So it allows you to sit down with your family and figure out who should you name as your executor, who should you name as your backup executor, your power of attorney, backup power of attorney. it helps you make these major decisions so that when you go in to visit your lawyer, it's not a 4-hour meeting. It's a really highly efficient 1-hour meeting. And I got to tell you, lawyers love it. I'll tell you what lawyers don't like. Lawyers do not like when family members come in and they go, hey, hey, Bill, hey, Mary, we need to write a will or update our will. What do you think we should do? And meanwhile, the lawyer, if you could just draw a little bubble like a cartoon outside of that lawyer's head, they're like, oh my God, how do I know? I don't know what's going on in your family. I mean, these are inefficient, unproductive meetings. So that's what this tool is. It's really giving people a head start so that they can feel confident when they go into that lawyer that they understand the basics. And then they can rely on their lawyer to really furnish really great advice. You've got to remember, lawyers take instructions. They're not planners. You guys are planners. You guys have big multi-generational picture of what wealth is, how to make it, how to preserve it, how to transition it. But the lawyers are really their technicians and they're taking instructions. And the more prepared and the more informed those people are with regards to power of attorneys, healthcare directives, and wills, man, those are great estate plans. Lawyers will love you.
And I would add to that, the more efficient and organized you can be is you'll reduce cost, but I would caution people to not be price sensitive and more focused on value. So I'd interview a few lawyers, and as long as we're getting really good value and making sure their templates are current and they've got a bit of a proactive approach that can help coach you on it, that's what I'd be seeking. But Pam,
that's what I've even seen, you know, after 21 years is, you know, a lot of people walk in with these wills to me and Kelly, and like I had for my first time this year, actually, someone come in with a 1-page will and personal directive and power of attorney. And you're like, how is this all in 1 page? Like, these should be each a few page document, at least, if not the will, a lot more than that. But you kind of go,
yeah.
And they said, oh, my lawyer's old, he's a family friend. And me and Kelly, I think for the first time, it was the first time that we actually were dumbfounded, because it was like, this is awful. And I can't believe a lawyer did this. And, you know, it was a good discussion to start having, but I think a lot of people think just because they've been to a lawyer, or we had somebody this year that went to go see a real estate lawyer, and the real estate lawyer was a really good friend of theirs, so they wrote their will. And like, they asked for my opinion on it, and I, you know, referred it to a lawyer, and like literally every sentence we had a problem with. And you start kind of going, that's what we're going to kind of get into in our next session too, is what do you need to see with that? But you know, those people were like, oh, it's $500, I saved some money. And what they're not thinking of is, you know, a lot of these lawyers build in the fact that they're there to represent you in the end. So some of their fees are still for them to represent you should something happen. And that's what you want them to be there for, to do that. And if you're also seeing a lawyer that's used old templates, you know, and I don't want to bug age, but age tends to be a little bit of it, as they don't know some of the new tax laws, or they don't know some of the new things that are happening. And I think the more we can get into making sure that the lawyers are educated, this is what they do, this is what they specialize in, they want to be part of your plan. They want to be part of all of this with you and work with planners and work with people to build that. And that's the people that you want as part of your team.
I think we have time for one more quick question.
I think we have a couple with hands up.
One of the last ones here, I kind of see it more of as like a comment, but it's a really great comment. It says, I think why I hesitate to start the will planning is because I'm afraid to not get it right or perfect the first time around. I really never thought about the obvious, that it would be revisited annually. I just did the Willing Wisdom checklist during the seminar and only received 20%. Time to act.
Well, that is a really great comment to share with this in a public forum, and you will immediately see that no one's going, oh my God, 20%, you're a bad person. It's, oh my God, you're an honest person who answered the question honestly, and now you are going to get really great recommendations. Good data in, phenomenal data out. You're in a great, because you've been honest, right? Really super honest in a public forum. You're going to get a really great path forward. And you're going to see that with a little bit of money, right? You're going to end up with great peace of mind. You're going to give yourself such a great gift. And if there's only one thing that I could add, please go to a lawyer that specializes in estates. I know you just touched on that. Do not go to Staples and buy a will kit for $20 and do it yourself, or do a holographic will where you take a piece of paper just before you hop on your next flight. Right? A lot of people do this before they travel with their spouse on a big family trip. And they start writing stuff down, and then one of their beneficiaries signs it and witnesses it. It's like, what are you doing? This is not the thing to do. This is not like, I don't know, a great do-it-yourselfer job. This is where this area of the law is incredibly exact. It is constantly evolving, and this is where you want a lawyer who specializes in estate planning, not one who does a divorce at 9, a real estate deal at 10, a corporate reorg at noon, right? You want someone who is doing this full time, someone who is really good at estates.
And we're always here to support you. So whether it's, now or in the future, where we're, questions and comments, this is kind of why we're here. We're also certified executor advisors. So with a plan, we can also help your people, and we've got it all lined up. So thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very, very much for everybody for attending. We look forward to our next event. Pam, do you want to mention that quickly?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a couple more questions there. Do we want to answer those? So I think like one person had actually put in there, they weren't making a lot of income during COVID-19, and the reason why they hesitate to start their will is because they're afraid not to get it right or afraid not to get it perfect the first time around. And they never thought about, it's going to be revisited. They might have to pay more money. And I know, like, we often hear that as, oh, I might have to pay the lawyer $500 more, but yet these are the same people that don't hesitate to pay for their kids' hockey for $500. And it's like, this is your life. And I think, I know it's tough as well to pay a lawyer up front, but I don't, and I guess we'll get into that with the lawyers as well. The costs, like some of the costs that we've seen, even with people who haven't had a will, just this past year, we had one client who did, get hit by a car walking her dog, and, she didn't have a will. And, just the costs of that, of making sure that, things are actually done properly, had that been easier, it would have cost a bit less money. And I think that's something that people kind of go, the $1,000 or $1,500 or $2,000 that you're going to spend is a lot of money, but in the end, our most expensive estate that they are still fighting with lawyers right now, big time lawyers, and it's a big estate, but you kind of go, their costs right now for each child is sitting at $150,000 Canadian each for 3 children. And you kind of start going, well, geez, could you have planned that better and spent $2,000? Or was it the story of, no, my kids are great and they're always going to get along and they're going to totally be fine with just this little piece of paper we put in place? No, we don't need to spend any money. And so it's like, that's how much of that estate is gone because they didn't think they needed to do it properly because their kids all got along. So the costs aren't small.
Yeah, and I would, and your next guest can talk specifically to this, but sort of the upfront cost is obviously higher for the original will, power of attorney, healthcare directive, but codicils, they're pretty inexpensive. I mean, they're really, codicil, an amendment to a will is pretty inexpensive, and if you're doing them frequently, once every 3 years or 2 years or something changes materially, you get into it's kind of like changing the filter on your furnace. You just get in the habit of it. And it's just great. It's just great to send that message to your family that you're on this and giving them those updated documents, like keeping people, especially executors, in the loop. And I don't know, no surprises. Like, it's really the gift of certainty. Great gifts.
Yeah, and you're never, like I look at too the perfection of it, and I have a lot of people that, wait. And, Jeff, you can even talk about that too, is Jeff hasn't even had a kid yet. And he's like, wow, who would I give my kid to? This is what's holding me back from doing my will. And I'm like, well, you haven't even had your kid yet. Let's just put it in place so that your future kid would have this. And then you can update it as you go. Because, I can tell you with the lawyers that we have on here, Matt has probably updated my will 4 times in the last 3 or 4 years. So that's, it's not a bad thing, and it hasn't costed me much money to do. And I think, at the end of the day, you're never going to get it perfect, and it's always going to be something that you're always updating, and I think that's totally fine.
I would agree completely. It's not about perfection. Just a little bit better every year.
Yep.
Okay, we do have another question. It is, our will is outdated. We did it 10 years ago. Where do we start to get everything updated?
I would think the Will and Wisdom Index, but also, share us with us that the current copy of the documents, and then Pam and Matt, and we have a bit of a process to kind of do an initial review to see if it justifies a change. Would either of you add to any of that?
Well, I'll be a little self-serving. I mean, for $24.95, read the book. This book is the best-selling estate planning book in Canada. It is an easy read, and it is not technical. It's about three people sitting in a lounge in Las Vegas talking about aging and dying and why 125 million people don't have a will. It is a funny, engaging, entertaining, but informative book that just gives people the confidence to say, I'm struggling with this. Everyone struggles with this. It doesn't feel like fun, but here's a methodology to get started. Here are 7 questions that everyone can use with their families. 1 question at a time. Take your family out to dinner and just do 1 question for 7 weeks. 7 dinners, 7 questions, and watch what happens. It's interesting. It's fascinating when we go into a process and not knowing the answers, how people will respond. And what I've learned is that our children, I've been married 30 years, I've watched our children teach us about our money. When we ask the question, what will you do with an inheritance? And we start this conversation, what they teach us about the future, it is unbelievable. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I would finish with,
go ahead. I was just going to say, one of our surgeons actually online here actually says COVID-19s are a time of real slowdown for many. As a result, it's an opportune time to get things done like your will, power of attorney, and health directive. And I wouldn't agree more with you on that, because that's why we're doing this, is people finally have a bit of time that they can spend doing these things.
If there's a silver lining, that would be it. I mean, yeah. Absolutely an amazing moment for us to really take something positive from this.
Yeah, I agree. And so talking about our next speaker. So our next speaker is on Thursday at 3:30, and his name's Matt Trotta. He's obviously an estate lawyer that we've worked with forever. A lot of you know also of Dennis Nerland, a tax lawyer that we also worked with, that Matt's always worked under. And so we've always worked with the two of them for almost the 20 years of our career. So I think that says a lot of who they are as people and the experience that they have. He's going to be talking about basically the roadblocks of, what people might have, some of the hangups of starting your will, and answering some questions that people may have to kind of get them started on their will, or started on updating their will. Like one person had said their will was 10 years old. And so it's like, how do we get started on that update process? So we're going to talk a lot about that, and talk a lot about some of the stories and some of the things that happen with that. And again, it'll be 3:30 till about 4:30, so about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, with some questions, and that'll be great. And we're happy to have you on that too, Tom, if you wanted to join as an attendee too.
Cool.
Thanks very much for coming today. We really appreciate all your advice for our clients, and really appreciate everything that you've done with us and helping our clients with the index. We've been very grateful to your knowledge and to your books. They're fantastic. I recommend everyone should buy them, and obviously do that index for free. We bought them for you guys, and that's, we were very thankful for the fact that he's even created those questions to really help people. And, it's been a great benefit to us.
Can I just add one final thing? You have licensed this tool, and your clients should know that had you not, this tool is available on my website for $195. So you are giving out a very valuable gift. Every day people plunk down $195 for this tool. I know it's a great gift that you're giving your community.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tom. Thanks everybody for attending. We look forward to future conversations in person through our meetings, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.